Hey, Gorge Poetry Show. Welcome, welcome. It's been a while, and I'm still in that post-operative state where I can't do any long uploads. So this will be a short one, unfortunately, but it's dedicated to the Toronto poet David Donnell, who passed a week, 2 weeks ago. I'm not quite sure. Not very long. A fine poet, conversational. Narrative, very Toronto-centric in some of his books, and often a mixture of short stories and poems in several of his books, including this early one, Water Street Days. And let's have a go. David. I met him once, Book City, coming out, going in, can't remember. We had a little chat about his then new book, Sometimes a Great Notion, and I challenged him on the title. We had a little bit of a debate there. Anyway, Water Street Days, my sister picking raspberries. There was a green pickup truck the summer my sister was 17, and my sister would get up early for breakfast and go to meet the truck across from the dairy bar on Cedar Street, where Peter and I always went on Sundays for milkshakes, bought with whatever was left over from our Saturday afternoon film. We were younger, scuffed, smart Alex, but I envied Nancy a bit, subtly, because picking raspberries sounded like more fun than playing tennis against the school wall, or catching pigeons, or getting 97% in history. This truck would take my sister and her friends out to a farm near Woodstock, and they would work long hours. You pick raspberries in a stoop under a big straw hat, so you don't get sunburned. With a break for lunch, sitting around a long picnic table eating my mother's sandwiches and deviled eggs. I think she was paid $1.25 a bucket for the raspberries, but a girl has to be careful. Pick steadily, natch, plant after plant, and exclude the soft, red, bruised berries and the hard little green ones that are bitter in your mouth like wintergreen. And don't walk into the bushes if you can help it. We're slim teenagers, eh? We're not truckers. I've thought of that summer several times since Galt. I always see my sister, in this particular scene at least, in a loose shirt and that big straw hat that keeps you from getting sunburned while you make an extra few $100s toward first-year classics in French. Picking berries, thousands of tiny red raspberries, and sometimes the raspberry leaves are a delicate stem. I see her through soft reddish haze. The brown dirt smudged on blue jeans and bare knees, made sweet with the smell of raspberries. That was July, and the blue-cuffed white gloves she wore for picking lay around the house for a year or so after she went for college. The black chow puppy Dusty wandered off to the country one day. My stepfather got drunk and smashed a kitchen window. Chris Bickers began going out with Carolyn Demiroff. There was a record snowfall in January. I remember the gloves best when I think of this. Better than the truck or the farm, which I visited once. Smudged brown, torn, I see them through a reddish haze, lying by themselves on a maple storage hutch, out in the pantry where we used to get apples for breakfast. Dancing in the Dark, a later book. Not that much later, but we're proceeding from the 70s through to the 2004, I think, here, or maybe the 80s. Had a fairly long career, did David Donnell. Dancing in the Dark, Poems and Stories. A piece called Dark Pigmentation and Lightly Colored Americans. Seems somehow appropriate right now, doesn't it? I have a copy of Danny Laferriere's An Aroma of Coffee, sitting at the far end of a long table where I sit and work in the morning. This is a clear and blue morning, about -10 degrees with some random patches of white snow. The kind of January day I like, although I'd probably rather be in St. Kitts or the rural market gardening west side of Florida. I'm trying to think about what dark pigmentation has to do with anything except that it's a colour. Okay, different people have curly black hair, or blue eyes, or blonde hair, or grey eyes, or hazel eyes. And I think it's simply a tradition of colour coding, practiced by various dark pigmentation and lightly coloured Americans. Charlie Parker was a genius, period. I don't see him as a black musician. Mike Tyson is a boxer. That's what he does. Nina Simone, listen to me. Nina Simone is a singer. I'm not crazy about Billie Holiday at times because she doesn't state the pain and then rise above the pain. Laferriere's book is an extraordinary novel because it's so clear and so evocative. You can just read it one sentence at a time and it's simple, but it adds up to a complex image and it's perfect. It's a book about a place, Haiti in this case, where he was born before he came to Montreal and then to Miami, and also a period in your life when sometimes you're a child and sometimes you're letting go of childhood. And then, of course, you'll probably have to send a postcard from a different city, Miami, and you'll say things are good here, and you'll probably say it in French, although in large distinctive writing, not black, but simply the writing of a person, with a great visual sense of detail and a very clear mind. I think Danny Laferriere and Wynton Marsalis are both dark pigmentation Americans. I would describe myself as a lightly coloured American, not as a white. Actually, Danny's postcard arrived in dark blue Pantol. Blue is the contemplative colour, and it's his story as he sees it now from Miami. Watermelon Kindness. Another book by David Donnell. See if you can find it somewhere. Your effulgence disorients me. There are approx 52,846 different things in this wide blue world, and here are 11 of them. John Coltrane's playing on giant steps distracts me from my thoughts about the falling dollar. But at the same time, it gives me a self-enclosed focus. Nicotine, absurd, ridiculous. A fresh, orange chilled under cool water split in half. A copy of Ian McEwan's Amsterdam that makes me want to go there. Matisse is displaced in my head for a few moments by Egon Schiele's Adele Harms in Geschreifen Kleid, 1917. The design of the dress is sort of amazing. A large photo of a contemporary retro 1920s corset by a Toronto designer. Bananas. If I have a chicken for supper, it won't be chicken with almonds and pistachios and basmati rice. A hardcover guide to Italian verbs. Several promises made to me last week by a very pretty registered massage therapist. I will get better, the left hip. It's so sunny, a remarkable afternoon. I don't think I want to see a film tonight. A Time for Drunken Horses. I still haven't seen that one. And now, of course, it's gone. Sometimes I get a head full of rose petals and cayenne and notes from others' lives and other periods. Better than now? Different. The problem with your effulgence is that it comes in binary form. Too wet, so to speak, or way too, shall we say, dry. Adele Harms, on the other hand, is always Adele Harms. A glorious riot of repression and emotion and colour, but of course untouchable. Someone I've never actually met. And the most recent one, Sometimes a Great Notion. Well, I think it's the most recent one, but it may not be. It's 15 years old. Here's an interesting one to end with. Oh, yes. At the Only Bar. I think he leads kind of a life that I never led. All these trendy Toronto addresses and places and people and artists, and there's a ton more poems that are all about Toronto streets and cafes and people he knew, and, Patti Smith and Arthur Rimbaud and, all that cultural stuff, and I like that. But we don't have time for the whole thing, but we'll get back to it when I can do longer shit. At the Only Bar. I'm at the Only Bar, and it's night and everyone's drinking and laughing. I'm probably the only person here who is just a tad melancholy. She has a black nothing dress on, and if she bought it herself, she probably paid about $500. Amazing how some of those design shops down on Queen Street and up on St. Clair, down on the Danforth, Sarah's for example, or that cute place Risque on Bloor West, can put a dress together that promises and suggests everything you can imagine. She says I've had men do a lot of outrageous things. One man paid me to have sex while he watched. I say, what do you do now? You're gorgeous. And she smiles and says, well, I'm not a stockbroker. I'm a full-time dancer. I'm turned on. I say, can I tell you something really intimate? Sure, she says, and moves all of her gorgeous self right up against me. I say, what I really want is to wash your hair and have sex at the same time. Oh, she says, I've had lots of promises like that. Like that song by Leonard Cohen, Take This Waltz. She rolls her blue eyes. Let your fingers do the walking. Let your imagination do the talking. She's hipper than I am. Well, okay, I say. Baudelaire had to make a living, and Walt Whitman loved the stars, and you've got a living. It's dark outside, and I'm a little drunk, and it's showtime. Thank you, David Donnell. Have a great time in heaven, and I'll see you one of these days when I get there myself. Yeah.